Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Brittany Higginbotham, and I'm with the Institute for Public Relations. I'm going to begin going over a few housekeeping items and introduce our speaker today while everyone is coming in. So before we begin and before I introduce our speaker today, a few housekeeping reminders. We encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A box. We will allot time at the end to answer a few audience questions. You are welcome to use the chat box at any time to leave comments, share resources, but we will moderate the questions through the Q&A box in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the webinar. If you have any logistical questions or tech difficulties, please feel free to private message myself or any IPR staff member in the Zoom chat. And then we are recording the session, so it'll be available for playback on our website and YouTube channel in the next few days. All resources shared during this webinar will be linked on our website and YouTube channel as well. Now, to introduce our lovely speaker today, we have Dr. Candace Parrish, Assistant Professor at Penn State University. She also is the Founder and Chief Communication Officer for Textured 8. Dr. Parrish she earned her interdisciplinary Ph.D. related to the areas of public relations, health communication, and visual communication from Virginia Commonwealth University. Today, she's going to explore how communicators can leverage virtual reality storytelling to create new realities for all communities in this webinar. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Parrish to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Thank you again to IPR for always putting on excellent programming for our industry. I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Let's see here. Okay, hopefully y'all can see this. So today I'm delighted to share a bit about the history, aspects of storytelling and ethics of virtual reality. We have seen in the last 6 months that the area of AI, which kind of runs parallel to in the tech industry to VR, has really boomed, right, since November to now. So I'll talk a little bit about that and how the two differ in parallel. But the field of PR also is ramping up for some new happenings this year. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So I am Dr. Candace Parrish. I am a pet mom. I have a dog named Orlando. He's a Bernedoodle. You can follow him on Instagram. I have a guinea pig named Tigo. He doesn't have a Instagram page yet, but don't threaten me with a good time. I'm the founder of Textured 8 PR and also Adelia Marie and Patrice, which is an eco luxury self-care company. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see more updates about both of those. I'm also an assistant professor at Penn State University in the Belisario College of Communication in the Department of Advertising and Public Relations. So what I've done, of course, I've done a lot of interesting research in the crux of technology and public relations and visual communication. But one of my greatest achievements in the last 3 years was developing the first VR enhanced online master's program at Sacred Heart University. And what it means to be VR enhanced is that the program, everyone who came into the program got a headset, and then they were able to take courses that were heavily immersed or kind of immersed in VR practices. So throughout the program, they got to experience different things with presenting in VR, creating events and actually hosting events in VR, doing, presentations in VR, things like that. And that program, you can actually reach out to Dr. Jim Castingay. He is working with the program now. I think they're going through some structural change, but if you reach out to him, if you have interest in that, I will put his email in the chat as I move forward through to the end of the presentation. So I would like to go ahead and pay homage to one of my great friends and mentors in the VR space, Professor Shanshan Wang, who is an assistant professor at Sacred Heart University. She is the founder of Next Reality Lab. That lab is the means for me to be able to create an interdisciplinary VR enhanced program. So definitely want to normalize paying homage to those who have shown you the way. And if you are looking to create a lab or to get information about how your organization or university can go about creating these things or these VR initiatives, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to Professor Wong, and you can take a screenshot, and I'll also put her information in the chat as I wrap up. So let's jump into defining virtual reality. It is a computer-generated world in which users can interact in a virtual environment. This interaction can vary from looking around to interactively modifying that world. So I don't know how many people have been able to use VR headsets in this space, but it's something that it's called immersive, right? Because you're in the virtual world. You put on some type of object headset or whatever that allows you to see in a 360-degree way, which is like completely all the way around in every area, the environment in which you are then looking at. So virtual reality, the experience of virtual reality simulates immersive physical presence in a real or imagined environment. So when it says real or imagined, it could be an immersive experience like going to a Beyonce concert. Some people take their 360 cameras and then they put them on YouTube. And if you have a VR headset, you can go on YouTube and watch it in that immersive way, which it is a real experience that happened. And then you're watching the 360 on your VR headset, or it can be an imagined environment, such as some of the applications that you can use in VR, like unfortunately the one that just shut down with Microsoft, where you can log on and it's kind of like a virtual chat world. There are different rooms that you can go into. You can design your rooms, you can host events, you can host presentations. I have been to many open mic night. I've been to many academic, presentations in VR. I've been to card games in VR. There's a lot of things that can happen in those spaces. So for those who are not familiar, there are some terms that we throw around: virtual reality, augmented reality, merged or mixed reality, which is usually the XR. So virtual reality means that you're completely in a digital environment. And then augmented reality means that it's partial, right? There are some elements that you're seeing. This is most likely what we use when we're on Snapchat or when we're on Instagram and there's a filter, right? That's augmented reality. And then mixed reality is a combination of both, which a good example would be when Google had Glass. It's kind of giving you the two worlds. Excuse me. So sometimes you'll hear like VR, XR. I just wanted to be able to let people know what the difference is between all of these varying types of technology. And then of course we have AI, which I will talk about a little bit later. So there are 4 elements that make VR distinguishable from other AR and XR mixed reality. 1, it's immersive. 2, it's memorable. It stimulates a realistic setting in a way that none of the other technology elements can. 3, it's impactful. There have been tons of studies over the last 20 years that talk about the various bodily changes that we can experience as we go through the immersive VR experience. And it's novel, right? It's something that you traditionally haven't done before as the field continues to be burgeoning. It's something that new users, early adapters, and people who are just going to be getting on soon will be able to say like, this is our first experience with this kind of thing. Unlike social media, right? Where when I was in high school, there was something called like Black Planet, then there was MySpace. These are things that kind of happened, that kind of predated like Facebook, and then there was Facebook. So it wasn't particularly novel, right? Because there were other types of social media, but this is an experience kind of like that. So let's talk about the history of VR. And one of my colleagues who I will quote later, Dr. LaShonda Edie, she always reminds me that it is important for us to look into history before we just jump and dash into the future of something. That way we can be as strategic as we can in doing the proper planning that we need to integrate this new technology, which can be wonderful, into our lives. But it can also be tricky, right? If we don't have the proper planning and the understanding of where this thing came from, how this thing started. So in 1929, Edward Link trained pilots using a blue box, which he called it flight simulator. And it was a way to sort of propel education in flight school, training pilots how to fly planes without actually being in the air yet. And so things like this, although they may seem like they're not directly linked to VR, all of those interfaces and all of those creations are the collective culmination of what VR is today. In 1956, Morton Healing designed Sensorama, which I have a picture here to the right. Kind of like an immersive head-mounted display that you went into and you looked at different film structures. And in the times of 1962 to 1968, Ivan Sutherland designed the Sketchpad, a computer drawing system. And most of us here are familiar with some version of the Sketchpad, which is awesome, but that type of like 3D structure is a part of the system of, it's a predecessor to the actual like VR headset. You can think of all of these things like a ladder, right? Each new development toward this direction is another prong on the ladder of development to an actual like headset system. So VPL, which stands for Virtual Programming Languages, announced a complete VR system in the 80s, and they did a lot of work from the late 70s to the late 80s. And you can see here to the right, this is one of the early VR headset models. It's also connected to a bodysuit that was supposed to be collecting data while the person was experiencing the virtual element. In 1994, Dave Riggett developed the VRML, virtual reality markup language, an important coding language used for creating different simulations in virtual reality. And of course, from 1994 to 2011, many smaller developments happened, but this is just a larger overview in time. In 2011, Palmer Luckey developed Oculus Rift, which is the predecessor to the Oculus Quest 2 that Facebook has, or the metaverse has today. In 2004, Facebook announced the acquisition of Oculus VR, which was created by Luckey on the last slide. In 2014, Sony unveiled a PlayStation VR. YouTube launched 360-degree video support in 2015, which is why on your VR headset, when you put it on, you have apps. If you haven't been used one, once you put it on, you have your basic environment, and then you can click your menu. You can access your current apps or download new apps, and YouTube is one of them. So one of the favorite things that I like to do when I get into VR and go into YouTube is look at videos that I know I would never do in real life, like skydiving. I'm never going to skydive, but I know that I could get in YouTube and watch someone like, ski off of a cliff or something and have the 360 video on them. So in 2016, Coachella and YouTube offer first virtual live stream, which is amazing. It was some of the first advancements in making a unified effort at a large event to incorporate people from remotely into the event. In 2016, Oculus Rift launched virtual social media hangout. That, along with AltSpace VR, was a long time staple. And AltSpace VR, which just ended this year, unfortunately, Microsoft closed it down. Those were two long-standing apps, kind of like Instagram and, I don't know, TikTok or Twitter. Those were staple apps on VR that you could use to hang out and meet up with people. In 2017, Microsoft launched Xbox One X VR ready console and headset. Snapchat launched World Lenses, in 2017. Facebook presented a camera-ready glasses with VR capability in 2018. In 2018, also Facebook released Oculus Go headset, which is one of the first iterations that they had outside of the Rift. They were trying to make it more accessible. And so between like 2020 and 2021, they've released Oculus Quest 1 and 2. And 2 is the version that most people probably have right now. It's about like $250. They tried to make it comparable in price to like an Xbox so that it would be more accessible. And it also connects through your Facebook because it's owned by the metaverse. So they were trying to make it so that it integrates with your daily life, your daily social mediated life. So we'll talk about integration a little bit more moving forward. So the types of headsets that there are phone-based headsets. And I don't know if you guys remember, Google had a campaign for the cardboard headset that you can, cardboard VR kind of model that you can put onto your phone and look into it like that. You can Google, I don't know what the sustainability of it was. I'm sure they encountered plenty challenges, but then Samsung had VR gear and Google had Daydream also. The most popular way to access VR capabilities are through the standalone headsets. Oculus Go, Oculus Quest 1 and 2, Lenovo Mirage, and there are some other companies who have their own headsets, but for multiple reasons, they're not accessible or they're very expensive. You can access VR through a game console like Sony PlayStation VR, or you can do PC based like HTC Vive, Valve Index, or Oculus Rift was also PC based. And when it says PC based, it means that it connects to your computer system. So you can't use it just like how you put on the Quest 1 or 2 and you can walk around. You can't kind of use it in that way. You have to make sure that it's connected to your computer system for, sustained access. Those are just the way those are built. Sometimes the programs are too heavy for a standalone console, so you need to have that backed up with your computer system. And of course, we know that those are going to be opportunities that most people will not be able to access. One, it could be, financially, but it also could be that that's not a daily part of their life. So they are not likely to, uptake that process. So in current VR news, we do know that Apple just released, if you're staying on top of this news, Apple just released that they are going to be launching Apple Reality Pro. And if you can tell straight away the difference, I'm going to go back. You see this headset, this is how the Quest 2 pretty much looks. It's white and it might be a little bit smaller, but it pretty much looks like this headset right here. And you can tell a notable difference in the size like straight away, right? This is, even that difference in size automatically makes it something that people feel that they could actually use on a more day-to-day basis. a lot of people look at the headset and it looks intimidating, right? It doesn't look like something that they feel like they can integrate or use daily. So they, pretty much leave it alone. And there still has to be a lot of education on what VR is and what you can actually, do with it. Sometimes when people think about immersive worlds, it kind of gets them in the sci-fi mood and they rather not. So I think that with the launch of the Apple Reality Pro, you're going to see more people trying it, also because it's their favorite brand. Probably a lot of people love Apple products, so they might be likely to walk into the Apple store. Again, there's that accessibility. If you can walk into the Apple store and get it versus trying to find a retailer online, or buy the Rift through Facebook online, it might be an easier sell for people. One of the drawbacks about the new Apple headset is that it is going to be around, I've seen estimates from 2,000 to 3,000. So that's going to be a huge drawback for accessibility, but they said they might have a subscription package. I think that you can pay monthly. So we'll see. We don't know exactly when it's going to launch, but it's rumored to launch sometime in the next few months in 2023. So let's talk about some practical applications for virtual reality. Because I'm an educator, a lot of my applications with virtual reality have been focused on the educational experience, the training, the teaching people remotely. That program that I was the director of, it was online, right? So our people were everywhere. They were overseas, they were in California, there's different time zones, blah, blah, blah. But it was a great tool for us to experience connectivity. We would pick a time that kind of worked with everyone, sometimes around like 8 p.m. on some days and Eastern. And we would all jump on VR, go into AltSpace VR, go to different rooms. We would play cornhole, just whatever. We would have a bonding experience as a group of people who live everywhere. So it's really great with that connectivity. And also it proves great with that training and educational aspect, which is why things like car design, things like engineering often really work well. And we've seen it emerge in the retail space, right? With mostly with AR, augmented reality, where you can try on like the glasses, or you can try on different like pieces of garments to see how it might look before you buy it online. But retail is trying to figure out the most effective way to have that same system happen in VR. And my personal opinion is that VR is amazing, but it's always been ahead of its time. Like launching in the 80s, can you imagine like someone in 1989 trying to like have you put on a headset to get into a alternate like reality? So there's a lot of amazing things that are happening, and I can just see all the ways that we will shop, through virtual reality, because it has the ability to get a little bit more in depth than just like looking at augmented reality, and trying to guess how things feel and look from there. And also in the continued learning space, VR has already been used in various ways. Here is a GIF right here of a medical training simulation. So this is one way for doctors and future doctors while they're in medical school to get understanding and education on complex learning such as surgery while they're still in practice mode and without necessarily working on a cadaver. So there are many ways in which that is probably going to, progress the educational field, especially in terms of being remote in the future and training doctors, from any aspect of the world. We've also seen it used with like space exploration, simulation, and things to mimic and, create models for different scenes, different different, realities, especially with going to places that you haven't already been. You can kind of like make mock realities and train, astronauts or whoever in various ways before they even do those different space explorations. So let's jump into why VR for PR. And I always laugh at that sound, VR for PR. The reason why we should really look at these things is because our whole discipline is rooted in a history of storytelling, right? Whether it's journalism, whether it's advertising, or whether it's PR or even marketing, we're always telling a story. It remains the most effective way to launch, campaigns to this day, no matter traditional or newer media. Human emotion and connectivity have been successful targets for storytelling, call to action success. We know by now that having more than one modality is better than, or having two or more modalities is better than just one for attention, recall, and many more things. And if you look to the right, I have a screenshot of my dissertation from 2016 and a screenshot of part of the infographic that it created. But the entire infographic, which all of this is available online, kind of told a visual story that helped women learn about cervical cancer prevention, African-American women learn about cervical cancer prevention. That same storytelling using visuals and text is the reason why virtual reality works so well, because there are different modalities that are going to be used. And it may not always be like visual and text, it may be audio and visual, which we know is a lot of what happens in virtual reality. And not just like the ones we always think about, like visual, text, audio, but also feel, like the headsets vibrate. So let's say that you land on Mars in the virtual reality space. You're also going to feel that vibration, and you're going to be able to look around and see the dust and everything, and it'll give you a really realistic feeling for what the story that is unfolding in front of your eyes is. So those are reasons why we should look to virtual reality for progression in our field. Another is that it is great for empathy, right? You may have heard it be called an empathy machine. And it's because it has the ability to really invigorate all of your senses into a story that you may not have had greater understanding of if it was just someone telling you about the experience. We have all had people in our family, friends, people in society tell us about something tragic that happened to them. And our level of empathy is going to hit a wall, because to some extent, we just cannot visualize, see, smell, hear, all of the ways that felt. But with VR, there are tons of simulations and videos out now. One of the ones that I assign my students to look at is The Party, a virtual experience of autism. And it's literally a video about 7 minutes long that you are going from the view of someone who is autistic. Their parents are having a party that day, and you are experiencing a varying level of emotion and bodily function. And once you finish watching that video, you understand way more than you ever could just by someone telling you, about their experience being autistic at a party in the first place. So VR has that extreme capability. We also know that it's great for social justice, right? This is a VR series called The Messy Truth. This one was about a Black man being pulled over by a cop. And in the video, you can actually put the headset on and you can see the different perspectives of what goes on from a routine traffic stop that could, turn violent for persons of color. And there's been tons of research from the 80s till now that shows that people who experience these simulations in VR had far more understanding of what people go through in life, and we're able to then identify and empathize with their circumstances. So it has the ability to impact emotion in a greater level. And these topics haven't just been with race or culture. It's simulations have happened with gender, ability, disability, etc. So here are some of the challenges and opportunities. VR is amazing, we know, for its immersive experiences. It can create a simultaneous technology learning opportunity, which is the fact that you are learning technology, you're learning the information, and you're learning these new experiences and these new stories that are unfolding. It would be great for progressing the field of communication, as we do a lot of storytelling for persuasion. We want people to adopt new products. We want people to adopt new activities. And we're always looking for a cause motivated campaign or something like that. So these are all the ways that VR would be an extreme advantage to our field. It's innovative, it's engaging, and it can encompass challenging elements that would be otherwise hard to explain or to pull off without the immersive setting. So oops, I think I went too far. Let me see. Boop, boop. Okay, yeah. So some challenges for VR are that the technology and the equipment is still a little bit clunky. You can see in this photo right here, everyone's in the room with it on. But I want to tell you that one thing that as a woman experiencing the VR process, it's not that inclusive, right? The equipment, you can tell that every woman in here has her hair down. Like, I would not be able to wear this high bun. And you want to know why? Because VR was not created by women. It was created by white men, and they have no understanding of what it might be like to wear different hairstyles. And so the whole thing is structurally not really that inclusive. They're trying now, like if you have, I think the Apple Reality Pro will come with like a place where you can put in your prescription lenses if you want, but that's, you know what I mean, another expense on top of that that's not really inclusive and is costly. And then there's different facial structures, and there's different also sensory details. Some people put on the VR headset and they get a little bit dizzy even when they're sitting down. So there are still some areas where we will have to, you know, kind of fix and detail as we go along the way. It is expensive for you to create a VR video. Now you can go the route of working with students, like the Mixed Reality Lab. You can hit up Professor Shanshan Wang and her students can make a video for you. But the average like company or person or university doesn't always have the accessibility to get these things done. And it can be hard to train, right? So there was always an element of surprise in the training when I was the director of the program. We would get in a group, we would get on Zoom, we would go in VR, and the students could rip off the headset and talk to me on Zoom if they had any issues. But that might not be something desirable for another faculty member, right? So the uptake long-term in education might be a little bit, you know, longer. And sensibility, responsibility of creators and designers regarding empathy has always been a long-term thought. As people call it, an empathy machine, some feel like that might be enabling people who design these programs or systems to feel like they are somehow above you know, the experiences of others, or they're like a super helper in many ways. So there's definitely going to be some ethical concerns that we have to work out as we progress through creating these programs, and we have to make sure that we don't create them from a just one type of viewpoint. So like I said, there's been a lot of comparisons to the AI movement, because, you know, they're kind of parallel. People talk about AR, AI, VR. sometimes all in one breath. But the biggest thing that you should understand is AI is taking off because it integrates vertically with everything we already do, right? It doesn't even have to require money. So many platforms are free. If you want to pay for a platform like to design your, product photos or whatever, you can. But even that is a lot of times more accessible than VR programming. And then there's drastic differences, obviously, like in affordability. One, the range could be anywhere from $250 to $3,000. AI, you can just, go to ChatGPT or go to open source or any one of these online platforms and type in, I've done it with Orlando, show me a Bernedoodle in downtown Orlando. And it'll pull up, all of these different things. And that costed me nothing. And I already have the hardware. So it's already integrated vertically. So hopefully one day VR will be a little bit more seamless like the AI movement, and then we'll see the rise and uptake. So some last words and resources. Here are some great resources for if you want to learn more about VR. There's VRA Association, which you can go and click around at their resources. There is a Global Virtual Reality Association, and I believe they have conferences. AR, VR, Facebook research group, which is great to be a part of, especially if you're an educator. And then there's also Educators in VR Association. And I want to share this quote from, and feel free to take a screenshot if it's way too much for you to read at the end of the day. It's a lovely quote from my dear peer, Dr. LaShonda Edie, and also assistant professor at Penn State University. She is an expert in crisis history. And one of the things that she told me from her research is that PR, the field of PR, had issues of credibility in the 90s, where we had to re-legitimize the field. And so as we think about the future of tech, we want to make sure that we root ourselves in the most effective and ethical ways so that we don't have to go through that process again. I almost grabbed my heart in 2020 when Elon Musk fired his whole PR team, okay? The last thing we need is for companies to feel like their brand is so important to the world that they don't even need PR any longer. So I'm so glad that didn't catch on. But it looked like it was about to be a forest fire. That could have been really bad for us. We want to make sure that we avoid those things in the future. So we have to learn about the past. And then finally, some pathways forward in VR. There's still time to jump in front of the training conducted. VR hasn't taken off like AR yet, right? There's still ways for us to make plans for inclusivity around application structures and access. There's still time for us to work with IPR to put together some guidelines for ethical usage and application. There's still time for you to pitch VR in various ways into your campaigns and communication strategies. And professionals should aim to plant roots in VR, in the space of VR application in general, so that by the time there's an uptick, we already have a presence and we're already really working with the field. Don't take a tip from what happened with social media, right? That was a prime way for PR to really run that space. And we kind of let it slip through our fingertips. And now it's everybody's space. So let's think about how we can get into VR now, root ourselves in it, and make a pathway forward for ethical application. Thank you so much. I would be delighted to answer any questions or hear any thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, you can drop any questions in the chat, or the Q&A box is perfectly fine. We just reshared the link to the video on depicting experiencing autism. So we'll add that to our webinar resources as well when we upload the playback. But does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Candace while she's here?
I'll stop share and add something to the chat. I'm just going to add some links to the chat of the folks who website links, and then the folks who I mentioned.
Yes, thank you.
Chat. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
We have a question in the Q&A. How do you compare the future of AR and the future of AI?
So right now, they said AR versus AR and AI.
Yes.
So right now, it feels like AR needs a facelift, so to speak. We've kind of stalled with some of the ways that we were like using AR. And again, it's because AI is so easy for us to use with all that we have, right? You don't have to go out and buy another thing. You don't have to go out and have someone make you an AR filter. It's one of the things in our program that I created 2 graphics courses in that SCPRO program. One of the courses, the students had to go and make an AR filter. But in order to make the filter, they had to download Spark AR, and then they had to learn all of the ways to create that AR filter. And then you have to learn how to transfer it over into the apps, right? So it's still quite a clunky process. There's no app right now, at least that I don't know of, that you can just download quick, create a filter, and then get it uploaded. AI is so quick for us. And so it's probably going to continue to take off more than AR until we can figure out how to make AR and VR seamlessly integrate with our practices. Now, I want to say that I do not think that the government is going to let AI go on at such an accelerated pace. I speculate that it's going to be like Bitcoin, right? Or any other new thing that comes up that booms into our existence. I think the government is going to get their hands on it and put some regulations into AI, but we'll see about that.
Okay, thank you. We also have a few more questions coming through. One person says, wonderful presentation. I think my concern is the cost, especially for smaller companies. Do you have an idea of what the cost is?
For the headset or the video? Like getting a video made?
Maybe you could speak a little bit to both. I'm not.
Okay. So the headset, you can get headsets today for as low as $200 to $250, right? And you would really have to think critically about what type of simulation you were going to be doing and where you were going to be doing it at. So if you wanted to do a simulation, let's say like, I don't know, at a trade show or at an event for your client, then you would have to factor in getting all of those like headsets. And then maybe you need 10 to 15. And then you would also need to factor in the costs for developing said program. That's a question that Professor Shanshan Wang could answer way better than me, because she actually works with students every semester to create 360 videos. Now, the one thing that I would say is that you can hire the Next Reality Lab to make your videos. So that would be a way, just like we do now, where if a company wanted to work with a PR firm at a university, they would pay, but it would be way less of a cost because the people are in training still. So that would be a way to do it, go about it strategically. You could also create your own 360 video. It doesn't have to be digitized, but you could get a 360 camera and then you can record whatever video, like the one with the autism at the party, that was used with a 360 video. So it doesn't have to be a digital rendering of a space. It could be that you have a 360 camera and you, I don't know, shoot it yourself with your own extras, or you contract a studio to shoot a simulation. So there are varying ways that it can go.
Okay, thank you. So one of our attendees has the question, what are the biggest skepticisms from consumers?
So I definitely know cost is a big one, because it doesn't, some people just don't see why they need it in their life, right? They have Facebook, they have Instagram, they don't know why they need to get on for a digital thing that a lot of people in their circles won't yet have. So there's like social uptake and also cost. But I think some people are just afraid of the unknown, right? Like, what in the world happens when I put this thing on? And like, some people are afraid of that super, that's why, AI probably had a long uptake until people could figure out what you could actually use it for. It's the same with VR. People don't understand, like, all right, so I put this headset on and I go into a virtual world, but why? You know what I mean? And like, does this begin to take over our lives? And I don't want to live in a virtual world, so I think there's a lot of like hesitations about what exactly it, just like someone asked, the cost, will friends be there and what could I use it for?
Yes, that's very true. I think as we'll see it integrate slowly but surely, and of course, starting with the biggest companies. But so we have another question. What are some organizations, research and industry that work with AR, AI, and other tech and communication? I'm a grad student passionate about tech and PR, and I'm thinking about applying my niche research to practice.
If you could message me on LinkedIn, that way I could go and collect some organizations for you. I don't have them off top. Obviously, the metaverse is like, one of the biggest that you could, go on their website and just apply for. But message me on LinkedIn. That way I can get some some things together for you, some companies specifically that I've seen around. I do know that Social Driver, one of my I was a junior associate at Social Driver in DC. They do a lot of tech things, and that the founders of Social Driver, one of them also taught a course that was VR enhanced in our master's program. So socialdriver.com, that company is going to be one of the 4 leading companies in the area. And if you message me on LinkedIn, I could probably pull together a few more for you.
Okay, thank you. Someone asks, have you seen any effective use of VR in response to disaster response and prep and planning? They're thinking of applications for communities at risk from floods and wildfires and forecast increase due to climate change. So to repeat, any effective use of VR in disaster response planning?
So not disaster specifically, but definitely with generating empathy for people's living environments. I've seen several like day in the life of someone in various parts of like Africa or some other third world countries, where it shows like, the kids, how they walk to school in their tribe. And they, cross train tracks and all types of things like that, and the drinking water. So I've seen it with like showing people what these living conditions actually look like. And that is a great motivator for understanding why, whatever your campaign is, whether it's to donate or to sign up here or to become a member here, showing a video like that in an immersive way would probably motivate people more. But I haven't seen anything specifically in disaster relief, but I know that it's an important area. And then I do especially encourage you to, charter that way to create content for those areas and those initiatives.
Awesome. We have another student that has a question. They say, I'm currently a student about to graduate with a degree in communications. Do you think certificates in VR for PR can help with credibility as a new PR professional?
I absolutely do. I don't think any I don't think I don't know of any certificates from the larger companies that have harmed people, right? So definitely go and get all of your, Hootsuites, look at PRSA, see what kind of certificates that, our field recognizes. Look at IPR, they have certificates and master classes. It's always great to continue your professional development, especially while you're looking for a job. That's something I did. I graduated in 2011 from undergrad, and it was still a recession. And I just kept learning and learning and learning. And I eventually learned so much that I went to a Ph.D. program. So I'm never going to, tell you not to do that. I definitely think having those certificates and having the extra learning. I don't know right now if there are specifically certificates in virtual reality. But I do know having experience with the field can help you increase your strategic abilities in storytelling. And that could be through your own testing, right? You could get a headset yourself and you could poke around and you could, because remember, just because you're a student right now doesn't mean that you don't have ingenuity and innovation. You actually have all the innovation you need within you right now to create something that probably in 2 years we all could be using. Look at Facebook, it was created on a campus and now it's a global phenomena.
Awesome. And then I think we have a final question. Could you talk about the interest in the use of VR during the COVID lockdown? Someone imagines there could be an increase in VR for public events. So do you want to speak to anything that you've seen there?
Public offense.
Sorry, public events.
Oh, public events. Okay, yeah. So there was VR did experience an increase in 2020 with the global pandemic. That's when you first started to see more concerts available in VR. I don't know if you remember seeing on Amazon, there were several concerts that were VR concerts. I think there was one with Megan Thee Stallion. There was one with Janelle Monáe. Different things like that go on or happen in 2020 when people couldn't physically get to concerts. For us, for me as an academic, it was perfect. I was already online. I just happened to make the right call at the right time. Wasn't even knowing that there was going to be a global pandemic, but it made it so much easier for us to go online and go in these virtual spaces and interact. Now, what I will tell you is that the reason probably organizations like Altspace VR, which is it was an Instagram in virtual reality. It was a place that you can go to these different things, have casual conversation with people you don't know, meet up with people you know. I used to play basketball all the time with one of my friends in virtual reality. It actually closed down this year and it puzzled me, but it's most likely due to the fact that we're gradually more and more in person and people probably are not utilizing their headsets as they were in the pandemic and the couple of years following.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. I think that wraps up the questions that we have today. Thank you so much, Candace, for joining us and sharing all of this valuable information. I've been seeing in the chat that everyone's really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
We have attendees from New Zealand,
Hey,
Slovenia,
New Zealand.
Slovenia, international audience. And so we thank you all for coming in from all around the world in different time zones. We really appreciate it.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, our next webinar will be in May, coming up on our future disability study that we IPR partnered with Voya Financial on. And we have a Gen Z webinar coming up in June. So stay tuned to our social and website for all of our upcoming events. And then this playback will be available within 24 to 48 hours on our website and YouTube channel. So thank you all so much for coming. And if you have any questions, we have, I dropped her LinkedIn profile, and contact information will be shared with our other resources from today. All right. Have a great day, everyone.